Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you,
I
Ali?
can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh, on a second here.
And it's not on my end.
Give me one quick second.
There you go. Now you work.
Now you can hear me?
Yes, but not here. I hear you. One sec. Let me see my.
Okay.
Well, I only get camera and microphone. I don't get speakers option here, which is weird.
I can hear you very well.
I know because the mic's working, but this
Yeah.
doesn't connect on because on the device, it's the first time I use Teams. It only gives me
Okay.
the option to select microphone and camera. It doesn't give me an option to select. Okay, keep speaking.
Yep. Can you hear me? Can
Yeah,
you hear me?
yeah. Can you hear me well? Is not
Yes, I
echoing?
can.
Okay.
No
If
echo.
there's no
No, we sound
echo,
good.
all right. If we sound good, rock and roll. We don't need this.
So first of all, thanks for taking the time. Nice to meet you as well. But also, I understand it's 9 o'clock at night in Dubai where you are.
Yes, right now I'm in Dubai, traveling. So here for now, and I still do the shows. I still do the. And you don't need to apologize because it's 9 p.m. I've had people who only had like they're in LA and they only have 11 a.m. Pacific time, and so I have to be up at I have to show up at 11 p.m. here to do the show. So yeah, this is cool.
Right. Okay. Well, good.
Nine,
Good to
nine,
meet you, sir. Good to meet you.
good to meet you too.
So I thought what we do is, I'll start off, just introduce myself, and then I'll introduce you, and then kind of, preview. So we're going to be talking about a couple things today. So first of all, you're an author. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Okay. And you're also the founder of Compassiviste Publishing.
Compassiviste.
Compassiviste Publishing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought that we would begin there. So it's great to
Right.
meet you. And our program is Good Morning Aurora. And one of our aims is to share interesting news and stories and things that could be of a benefit to folks. So whether that is mentally, our health, our wellness, our spirituality, anything that can kind of bridge many gaps in the world, bring us together and teach. We love that. So
And
go
that's
ahead and
why
yeah.
before you start, that's why Compassiviste exists above and beyond Compassiviste Publishing, because the publishing arm is just a tentacle of the octopus that drives the social change through spirituality, art, music, publishing, and a bunch of other streams. So
Okay.
it's not just publishing. Publishing is just an arm of what you're touching on.
Okay. Awesome. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then tell us about your journey and the beginning of Compassiviste.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Ali Horriyat, and the founder of Compassiviste. Compassiviste started really from a young age. I just didn't know the word. I didn't coin it yet. I really wanted to have an impact on reducing suffering throughout my life because I grew up seeing the value of people who did that and the impact of people who did that. Um, and so as I grew up, I started doing the little bits and pieces that I could. And what society told me was the right way of doing things. And I became wealthier in my world, in the finance world. And as I became wealthier, naturally, I became more philanthropic, whether it was the taxes pulling me in that way or whether it was, my willingness to support. It's a gray area. But the bottom line is I tried to help. Then came a moment in my life where I realized this philanthropy is a little hypocritical. This philanthropy is the kind of philanthropy that's not helping the people that I'm aiming to help. It's just giving me an ego trip. And so I realized it was my addiction to money and my addiction to wanting to be recognized in a certain way that ended up causing me to act in these ways. And so I let it all go. I gave away all my wealth, every penny. All I slept wherever I could. I even slept on train stations for a while. And I learned. I learned about the world. I learned about what it means to help, how you can help in a way that makes a difference, not in a way that 90% of that help really doesn't get to the point that it's supposed to. And so I got involved on the community level. And that's when I realized the only way to really make change is to be hands-on, to be involved. And then I look back at the histories that I learned, and I realized in the delusional state that I learned about them, I missed the point that from Jesus and Moses and fables and stories beyond, all the way to, things that are so recent you can kind of grasp and relate to, Martin Luther King. These people all were in the trenches. They were all in the change making. They were all active. And so I realized all of them were activists. They weren't trying to help poverty from their palaces. They weren't in the ivory tower trying to support racism. That's not how it went, trying to fight racism, essentially. That's not how it happened. They were there doing the work, making the difference. And it wasn't about the money, it was about the movement that made the difference. God knows Black Lives Matter has more money than Martin Luther King ever did at his disposal. But we can all agree at the level of change that was made because of people like Martin Luther King, because of people like Rosa Parks, because of people like Abraham Lincoln, gradually to where we are today. And we ride on their backs, but we're not doing the activism that they did with purpose. We may have a lot of riots. We may have a lot of Rodney King situation. I remember it. I was young, but I still remember it. There was a lot of rioting going on, but there was really no way to get to the goal of harmony. Essentially, that was the goal. That was the anger. The anger was, hey, we want to be all recognized as humans, whether I'm Black or white or whatever I may be. And so Compassiviste came to life. I thought, you know what? It's the activism that matters, and it's the compassion that these people had. Mandela had compassion, and it's not just, I'm touching on one sector of history. You go into any nation's history, and they will have revolutionaries. They will have people who made change, people who made the country better, people who made the world better. Mother Teresa made some things better in India. So I thought compassion is key. Without compassion, you're really not involved. You're really not caring about the issue. And so put compassion and activism together as a character, it becomes Compassiviste, activist, compassion. And that's how Compassiviste came to life. And then I thought, okay, now I have an understanding of who I need to be. How do I go about doing the work? And that's where everything kind of started developing in the octopus fashion of what we now have as our Compassiviste octopus.
That's awesome. So the melding of compassion and activism. I've always felt so when you approach things with empathy, when you approach tough things with empathy, you can really do a lot, and you can make a lasting change that'll actually be a binding change that will then go. And kind of to your point, what you said, like there's a lot of most when conflicts arise or tragedies and atrocities arise, a lot of people are very reactionary. It's time to get out the banners and the slogans. We may march for it today, but who knows what the landscape will look like in the next 3 months. And I feel that those people, as enthusiastic as they are, they should look at the issue from a longer term goal and a longer term focus. And then that would, for a lot of times that may require you not to be in the street every Saturday morning, but to actually be in the classroom or the boardroom or working with those like-minded people to make that change. So I am glad that you threaded the needle with that, so to speak, because I think that is very important. So now it's Compassivist publishing. How do we get into that? So we talked about the octopus.
Right.
Now let's do some of the
So one
tentacles.
tentacle of the octopus is Compassiviste Publishing, right? The octopus has 8 tentacles. One of them is Compassiviste Publishing. The story there, all of the tentacles have their own story, their own experiential story of mine that got them, really birthed them. And the birth of Compassiviste Publishing came as such. I was writing, I always wrote. And so I never cared to publish. I just wrote. And so when I gave everything away and I left my life, I gave up everything and I left. I thought I started writing a lot because that gave me some kind of stability to myself without going crazy. Because at one point I thought, oh my God, what have you done? You work so hard, and and I was just going crazy because that was my detox stage, right? Like you take any addict, you put them in that detox stage. It's the hardest week of their life. So
Right.
I was going through that. Writing helped me a lot. I had a friend who was connected to the publishing world, the industry, agency, literary agent, and all of that. And they saw some of the writing, some of the poems, a little bit of here, they're experts, and they said, some of these are really good stuff, Ali. And I said, really? And she's like, yeah, it's nice, it's deep, and you could put this out there. And for the first time in my life, I said, really, you really think that the writing's worth something? Because I never aspired to be an author in my life. It was just for my own sake.
Right.
She said, let's see. She took a little bit of the work, showed it somewhere. One of the big publishing houses turned around and said, we like this. And you know what? There's a lot of writing, because we're talking about 13 books I have. So at that point I had 10. And they said, well, there's a lot of writing here. We can make 10 books out of this and have a big situation. I said, great, let's talk. Let's talk Compassiviste. I got excited. I came in with everything, right? I said, this is the purpose. And they looked at me and said, no, first of all, we print in mass. Second of all, you're going to do a book tour. Third of all, this and that. And then we don't like this art, and we don't like that you're saying there. And we don't like this little chapter here. And some things you can't talk about. And one of the things I was not allowed to talk about is I have a book, which we're publishing under Compassiviste, but it's called Capital Racism. I make the argument that racism isn't inherently a cultural thing. So, if a Chinese person sees a Jamaican person, and in the mix of this, there's also a Greek person that shows up into the conversation, they're not going to hate each other based on the skin tones. They're not going to attack each other based on their skin color. It's just not a natural reaction. So it's not something that happens by vision. You don't see a person different color and you just attack them. I think capitalism, for slavery, as minimizing the cost of maximizing profit method, gave birth to the idea. The opportunism gave birth to the idea of reducing one segment of humanity by a substantial difference visually, so you can kind of be like, that's different than I am. That there is not me. That's not me. So that's slave, and made that happen, and then bred into society this hate that we still are living with. And they said, you can't say that. I said, why can I not say that? Where in this argument is it wrong? It's not like I brought up some eugenics or something crazy back up that you're telling me I can't say that. What's wrong with it? You're not black. I said, oh, I'm not black, so I can't talk about racism. And they said, no, in America it's really finicky, and people don't, it's a white person talking. I said, I'm not white, first of all. Second of all, Abraham Lincoln championed the whole situation to kind of help end this, abolish slavery. Mm-hmm. So what about that? What do we do about that? Do we hide him? Do we what do we do? Tell me what we do with the white people who are not racist. Because I think you're racist.
You weren't talking with an American about this, were you?
No. And
okay.
And I said, what do we do about that? And then they brought in their American arm, right? They said, well, let's talk to them. And these people were racist. They were literally like flat out racist people. And they started talking about, well, no, we can do this as a co-authorship with somebody else that we have on our roster. Somebody from here, kind of, who's black, who's an advocate, they have a big following, and blah, blah, blah. And we can kind of script it this way and that way. I realized it was all politics now. I said, first of all, I'm not printing because mass publishing is slavery, because, almost 90% of paper that's logged is illegally logged. The books are bound, not in some warehouse or some facility in the state of New York that it's being monitored properly. It's some, developing country that probably is hiring a child to glue the pages. So I don't
Right.
know that. You don't know that. You can't prove that to me. So I don't know how comfortable I feel about being part of this child labor situation right now, and the paper logging, illegal logging paper situation, and all the costs, environmental costs, because I write about that. I'm an advocate. I worry about these things. And I can't go on your book tour. And they threw at me this, well, you can get a chartered flight to do the US tour leg. And I said, I've been on chartered flights. You can't buy me like that. It's not, you can't throw me a Rolls Royce with a driver and I say, ooh, I've had that. You can't buy me. So then they realized they can't buy me. So then the conflict began. And so we disagreed. We walked away. When I
Right.
walked away, I said, I'm not losing this fight, because if I walk away, that's me just shutting up. I have to build something where the next alley that shows up at anybody's doorstep and they say, you can't be who you want to be because we dictate who you can be, because we give you the right to who you can be. That person doesn't have to kind of bow and kneel and say, yes, master. That person
Right.
says, no, never mind you. I'm going to go here where they respect my work, where they respect my art, where they respect the voice that I'm trying to bring out. And so I created Compassiviste Publishing, where we publish books that resonate with people, that solve problems, that bring awareness to the social, environmental issues, the inequalities, the injustices around the world. We promote them, and we're a traditional publishing house. So it's not one of those vanity presses or anything like that. We pay the full, marketings and fees and all the costs and everything else. And we leave you your rights. So we don't take the rights and give you a 7-year contract where, we own you now. It's your art, it's your writing, it's your word.
Right.
I shouldn't own it because you need me to kind of publish it. You should be the owner of your own work. You should be accountable to your own. You're responsible. You have a duty with your work, because when you put this work out, your duty is to, this is my work, this is what I advocate for, and this is what I'm trying to do in society. And you need to build that following and build people to, come along with you and advocate, whatever that may be. You could be advocating for animal rights. You could be advocating for whatever cause it is that you're trying to do betterment in. So we built Compassiviste Foundation, Compassiviste Publishing on that foundation, on the foundation of the liberty of the author, on the rights of the community, the human and animal community of the world. So no slavery involved. We know where everything comes from. In our situation, we don't print. So, we're not, because print publishing is not just about, this myth of sustainable publishing, because the truth is, you print the book and you can kind of maybe show that you have a way that you're offsetting the carbon, which is also not true, because it takes many years for those offset trees to kind of reflect that. So what are you doing about the next year and the next year and the next year? So that's a whole conversation. But aside from that, the book comes and goes into a bookstore. People drive to that bookstore, look at it, maybe buy it, maybe don't, and somebody will buy it. There's staff going into that bookstore. That bookstore has lighting. That bookstore has heat and air conditioning. That bookstore is taking up space. All of these things happening in that bookstore is carbon that you need to calculate incrementally into that one book, its percentage, its share of the carbon of all of this life, shelf life. You do all of that and tell me you
I
can
like
have a
that.
sustainable, you have to do all of that and tell me you have a sustainable model. You don't. Then tell me you can track and trace this book all the way to its origins, from the moment the author emailed it to the publishing house to the moment it arrived on a ship at the port, wherever in the world, for that region. So, all of these taken into account, the logistics costs, you're not calculating all of these in the carbon. You're just telling me I got the paper in a way that I can kind of show with a couple of stamps and approvals and badges that this is good paper. This is sustainable paper. That's all you're showing me. The rest, I ask, I don't know. It's a third party. It's another person. The logistics is not internal to our publishing house. All of these are not costs that we care about. They have to care about their own costs. No, it's your product. You're selling it. You're profiting from it. So you have to care about it. And so those are the issues that we raise with the publishing world. And we're trying to get people to understand that getting an education is not necessarily in flipping the pages. Music changed. I mean, I remember when you used to buy vinyl, it was this big. And I remember then it became, cassettes, and that was very polluting. So a lot of plastic went into that. Then from the cassettes, it went into CDs, and that was a disaster. And, slowly we're here now where, on your smartphone, you have all the music there, and there's no need for all of this extra stuff. And there's no space. Nobody goes to music stores anymore to buy music. You don't need.
Right.
So it's becoming so clean in that way, right? So why can't we do that with other industries that have the capacity and possibility to use tech to get there? We can do that with publishing. But the profit margins get squashed because you can't sell a $65 hardcover that looks really fancy and, juxtapose it to a $65 digital emailed version, to your reader. $10, okay, 15 maybe, okay, but that's about it. You can't really do that. And they turn around and say, okay, then, it's not worth it for us. We're going to stick with this unsustainable method because profit is king.
Right.
And that's the activism of Compassiviste Publishing. Finally, it leads into the next arm, which is Compassiviste Foundation, which is the registered charity, a global registered charity with arms, chapters around the world. Okay. We take every author's cause, we take every author's purpose, and we try to tie it in to one of the charity's core causes that we work with, or we try to build a cause that reflects the author's want of change. And we do this in the royalties as well. So we actually try to get as close as possible to an even split. And, we do 55, 45, 55 for us. We cover all the expenses, 45 for the author. But in that 45, the author has to give 5% of that of their 45. So they really take home 40. And that 5% of the total that they get, they have to give to a charity of their choice. It doesn't have to be Compassiviste. So we want them to get involved. We're mandating them to get involved in some proactive work if they're not already. So if they are, naturally, that money goes to their cause or charity or whatever got them to write the book. And if they aren't, then it's about time that you don't just sit there and think that your pretty words are going to make a difference. Maybe good, but you need to do more than good, which is just like a lot of professors, in universities. They write really meaningful books, but where's the work behind the meaningful words, right? I want to see you in action after you write the book, not just pocketing the royalties in your cottage while the suffering continues. And here you are, you've given us an answer on all the wars of the world and how we can resolve them, but you're nowhere to be seen. You're not putting your money where your mouth is or where your pen is. So we ask our authors to be involved. And so we tie them to the foundation, which also ties in a lot of other arms and stuff. And we try to get this activated. And, within the community, then there's some kind of movement. It's not just about reading the book and saying, oh, that was a good book. I like the author. I'm going to buy his next book. No, I'm going to buy her next book. No, it's about, I'm activated with this author. I'm in bed with this author. We're going somewhere together. We're actually going to do this. We're going to fix this problem together because I see it. I understand what the author's saying. And there is a place where I can be involved.
What do you think is the biggest human or global issue right now?
I think there isn't such a thing as a singular global issue, because when you talk about environmentalism, and sometimes, I say this to people and they don't understand at first. When you talk about the climate change and environmental issues and whatnot, if we tackle racism or poverty to the end of it, we stop it altogether. Say there's a way to stop poverty altogether. We've just printed $1 billion and gave it to everybody. These everybody's who now have $1 billion are going to add to the climate problem. We're all going to die sooner. We're all going to die sooner. Because we're not living sustainably. But if we resolve the climate issue, there's no tech that's going to do it. But, if we start consuming mindfully and start understanding what we're doing in our everyday choices, and we respect those and change our habits and our ways, then we have a chance of survival, or we have a chance of fighting this mass extinction. At that point, with that covered, we start thinking of other issues that we're facing, and those other issues become, the other reflections of society. So really targeting one to fix is just going to allow the other fires to kind of grow without you looking at them. You've got 4 wildfires. Which one do you tackle first? No, tackle all, because you have the
Right.
resources to tackle all. Tackle them equally. That's the way I put it. So for me, though there are some that are not globally pressing, there are issues, but overall, the main issues that people speak about, whether it's poverty, whether it's climate change, whether it's inequality, racism, discrimination, those are all connected. The climate issue helps injustice and inequality. It helps refugees to have to move from their lands and then not be valued equally in the new lands that they're in when they arrive with nothing and there's no programs to support them. So
Right.
is this a refugee issue or is this a climate issue, right? Is poverty an inherently systemic issue that we have because that's just the way humanity is, or is it something that's built on other premises? So to say there's one issue that trumps everything else, I don't buy that. I think that's compartmentalization for us. They put us in these little compartments, so we fight just this one issue that we kind of say we're a specialist in this. So if I was a specialist in animal rights, no podcast, no news report, nobody would want to talk to me about environmental issues because, hey, he's not on the list here of thought leaders of environmental issues. He's on the list of the
Right.
animal. So when we do the thing about the dogs in the shelter, we'll go talk to Ali, but we're not going to talk to him here. Meanwhile, I could know the problems of animal rights through the environmental issues that are happening in wildlife ecosystems. But nobody's putting those two together because we're so learned to compartmentalize each other.
Well said, man. For the now for the listeners, is how can we find out more about Compassiviste Publishing?
Well, you said it, compassivistepublishing.com. Simple. You can go there. We've kept our socials to just Compassiviste, so it's at Compassiviste everywhere, and
Okay.
we merge everything together because again, we don't want to do that. We don't want to compartmentalize. So we don't want to say just buy the book. We want to say, hey, visit the space, connect with the space, understand that this book that you're buying is connected to this cause that you can serve, that you can help, that you can support, that you can be a part of. When you buy this book for $10, yes, you're, the $6 that's ours, we're purposing it to the cause. But come and look at the cause. Maybe you like the cause, and maybe you read the book and you say, you know what, now I'm going to give to the cause, or I'm going to volunteer at the cause, or I'm going to call them up and say, hey, I got something that you guys may be interested in. Let's come together. Let's build communities that we can be part of one. So we want people to visit the octopus. And when you visit one page, you can kind of find your way through that page to the foundation, to the blog, to the movement, to the podcast, and everywhere else. So, visit compassivistepublishing.com and kind of find your way through the whole space.
And because I wanted to, how do you pronounce your last name, sir?
Horriyat.
Horriyat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It means freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Because the root word is Horriya, right?
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Horriya in Arabic.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Horriyat.
it is. And that root word is freedom, right?
That's right, man. That's right. So you hold an undergraduate and graduate degrees in economics, political science, philosophy, business, international relations, and conflict resolution and religion, and author of 12 books, essays of
13.
collections, including collections of essays, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
poetry with themes ranging from racism and capitalism to spirituality, love, and compassion. You believe that humans must, quote, love always and always love, close quote. Yeah, very well said, man. I think so my background, I grew up in Illinois, joined the military and did a lot of traveling, and I saw a lot, and I feel like I I shed my skin 30 million times in that experience because like what I thought about, I mean, growing up in America, I didn't know anything about outside of Illinois. I had never traveled overseas. And I joined the military after 9/11. And
Mm.
I feel that in retrospect now, I feel that while it was a very formative experience, I do feel that my lack of knowledge about the broader world wasn't really, still wasn't satisfied, even with all the amazing things that I saw. I mean, it's even now, still to this day, where I find myself reading articles or learning different things or watching documentaries about places that I had been next to or countries that that border countries I had been to. And it's like, holy cow, like I didn't know that. There's still, you learn so much. And when you look through the
Mm.
frame of just, when you look at the world through American eyes, or you look at America through worldly eyes and haven't been, there's a lot that you're missing. So we do need to, as human beings, as people with bodies, fleshly bodies, we do need to connect. We need to touch. We need to empathize with each other. That's the way that we're going to continue to make progress in this world.
Mhm. Absolutely. That is 100% right.
So what's next for Compassivist? What's next, and what does the future hold? Because with the background and with your bio individually, I mean, you've accomplished a lot, and I feel like you are not yet done.
No, I just got started. I'm far from done. So I've
Far
had
from done.
I've had my rebirth, and I feel like Ali, when he said I'm not going to war, and he took on a whole country and he won. You know, he did. He won. He stood his ground. He won, and I take that and I say to myself every day, this is a person who, at the height of everything that everybody dreamt of, stood a moral stance. And we like I tell you, we don't tell these stories. I mean, you're American, you're from Illinois. I've been to Chicago. I've seen the history of your state, bits and pieces of it here and there. And I've been to Washington. I've been all over the U.S. more than many Americans because I've traveled through the whole country. And I don't see the stories told the right way. I don't see the things rising the right way because, you know, people don't want the rising. People don't want the coming together. The people in power, they're averse to everybody being in love. And the are not like that. The smaller communities don't have that hate. The smaller communities don't have that dissection within them. They're all just want to be human and get on with their lives. And the thing is, I feel this start is an activation to bring people together, not for me, to bring people together to fund Compassiviste in a way through the people, not some we've had and we've documented very, very wealthy people who've tried to donate, and we've not accepted it because we don't want to be puppets in a sense. We don't want them to say, well, I want my name on this banner now, or you guys should do this because I really believe in this cause. No, we're here for the people. So I'd rather, have 10 million people give me $1 each than one person give me 10 million, because I worry about that one person give me 10 million, but I don't worry about 10 million people give me $1, even if it's their last dollar, because they believe in it. And that's how you build community. So we're trying to build community. Once we build community, our programs, arts, music, publishing, gaming, food, all of these different, the charity, all of these, the podcast, the apps, all of these different programs that we've built that are coming out, these are going to be the drivers of the octopus. And when this octopus starts rolling through, you're going to see a lot of change. And it's not violent. It's not about revolution. It's about love. You're going to see a lot of loving change. You're going to see the kind of change that Gandhi created, the kind of change that he came with. He said, we're not killing anybody. We don't want war. We just want our freedoms. So that's what Compassiviste is looking to do now. So the next time, you hear about us, it's probably going to be people joining and people learning and people and we really believe in education. Your story touches exactly on that. You went and you saw, and that was an education, and you learned a lot through that education. And before that, you did it. You weren't sitting there educating yourself. And a lot of people around the world don't do that. They're not educating yourself. But after those trips, after those deployments, you came back and you were a changed person, and you're one of the lucky ones to not come back with all the traumas and PTSDs and everything else that I've spoken with, that I've dealt with, veterans who've gone through a lot of problems and things like that. You're able to, focus and like you say, adjust your life and do what you're doing and try to elevate and educate people in that scope as well. So, you're blessed in that way, which is great. So you should take that blessing and that privilege that you have, that you came back, all of you, and you're healthy and safe, and use it to something powerful. And that's what Compassiviste is doing. It's just a platform for you and everybody else in the world who are seeing that love really is better than every other way that we're looking at things, to come together and say, okay, let's do this together. It's not about one person. It's about loving everybody together.
And for those interested in being involved, they can go to the website.
They can go to any of the websites, whether it's compassivistfoundation.org or compassiviste.com or compassivistpublishing.com. They'll all lead you to different spaces. And that's the beauty of the education. I don't want you to go on the website and look for the books button, press it, buy, and get out of there. No, I want you to go on there and have a moment. Give me 5 minutes. I put in a lot of work into trying to bring people together for a better life, a better future, collectively. So, if you like what you're hearing, don't go in there and say, I like what I'm hearing, I'm going to buy a cap from them or something to support them. Don't do that. Come in there and give me 10 minutes of your time instead of giving me money, because that will change you into doing more change versus the one-time donation and I never hear about you again. We want people to activate. We want to ignite people. That's what you're going to see next from us, the ignition stage.
Now, you mentioned Ali, who was the prophet's grandson. Is that correct?
No, I mentioned Ali, who was the boxer who decided not to go to war for the United States.
You mean Muhammad Ali?
Yes. Cassius Clay, that Ali. Yes. Is the Islam prophet's cousin, and he too is inspirational. I've actually written about it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I completely had that wrong.
No problem. But now that you mentioned that, he had moments very similar to Ali, and both of them really were revolutionaries in their own spaces, and both of them were very powerful philosophical people who made change in their societies, who really did a lot for their communities. And I want to be arrogant and say it runs in the Ali name, but the point is, let me throw that in there. But the point is, both of them, you look at a lot of people in the world, and really it's the courage. It's the courage to say, I'm going to stand for this. I'm going to take it all the way, And you look at history from a lot, you look at Moses, right? You think to yourself, doesn't matter if you're religious or not, doesn't matter if you believe it, whatever, think of it as a cartoon. I don't care. The point is, here's a guy, who a voice tells him, go to Pharaoh. Here's a stick, go to Pharaoh, don't be scared. Would you do it? Would you right now take a stick and go to the biggest dictator in the world and say, I tell you to, die or leave or, let the people go? Probably not.
I made a history out of weird things, but for the purpose of this conversation, I probably would not. No.
Exactly. You see what I mean?
Right.
You probably would not. And I would not, right? And many people would not, but this person did. Well, whatever. Mm-hmm. Jesus, same thing. I mean, he stood, even when they told him, look, it's a middle of the night, just leave the jail, take your people, go to another town. We don't want to kill you, really. And he said, no, we're doing this. Socrates, same thing. They said, leave. You're polluting, the kids' minds. Leave society. He said, no, I live by the law of the society. And I'll die by the law of the society. So they made their stands, right? So these people who made their stands are the people we should look at and say, you know what? We can't be hypocritical, because that's what not standing is. Not standing is hypocrisy. You know what's hypocrisy? Right now, in the US more than anywhere else in the world, you're going through Black History Month because it's February. Mm-hmm. So in February, we think about Black in history and racism and all those things. But you know what March is? March is no longer Black People's Month. March is something else. So, we push that aside. Now, all the Canva designs and the Instagram posts and all those things we had for racism and anti-racism and whatnot, those we park. Because now March has a new calendar. And if we keep going on about that stuff, we're old. Like, we're from last month. So, we don't go. That's hypocritical activism. Right? That's not how you make a stance. That's why things don't move forward in the world, because we're just so busy following calendars that really nothing. Everybody's charitable in Christmas. Everybody wants to give a poor child who doesn't have gifts or toys for Christmas a toy. But what about in January? Are you thinking in the middle of that same Chicago cold whether that child is still warm? The child that you gave a Christmas gift to. Nobody cares in January. That's hypocritical activism. So, that's what we're trying to change. And that's what Ali did, the boxer. He stood his ground at the height of his career, at the height of, having everything he had and everything could have dreamt of. He walked away. He said, put me in jail. Do whatever you want to do. I'm not doing it. It's against my morals. I'm not doing it. That's power.
That's what it takes sometimes, though. You have to make that stand. There comes a point in your life
but
where
if you do it collectively, but if you do it collectively, if 50 million Americans say no to something, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to happen.
Done. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to happen. But when there's 20 people rioting and they're not getting their message across, and it's just a lot of anger coming through, and nothing else is really happening. There's no advocacy. There's no budget. There's no legal.
It's not solving anything.
Not solving anything, and it's bringing more hate because people look at them and say, see those crazy rioters? That's why the situation is happening, because of those crazy people, because they're all like that. Then they generalize, and then the media puts the camera on there, and then all of a sudden the cause is doomed. So it's all about the right kind of activism, peaceful, educated, bringing the right people together. You need the whole sphere. You can't just have actors and celebrities paying money to every cause that becomes popular and famous that day. Like I remember when the ALS challenge happened. Remember everybody throwing buckets of ice over their heads, but who was really involved? I mean, that's not enough to raise awareness for that. It's good first step. It doesn't take much for a celebrity to just pour a bucket and get a lot of followers and get a lot of people watching their views and becoming more relevant in the media. That's lovely. But how many hours did you take out of your life to give further to that cause beyond the bucket?
Right.
That's the difference we need to understand. That's the difference we need to all think about, whether with celebrities or lawyers or whatever we are. What are we giving from our blessings to make the changes that need to be made before we no return?
Well, Ali, this was a great discussion. We're kind of getting close to the end of our time here. But in this, when I do package this interview, it's going to have the details and the links where people can go to the publishing, the foundation, as well, and to the main website. It was good to talk to you, and it was really good to hear a world perspective from someone like yourself who is not in America, with fresh eyes, but also being an author too, because we've had a great number of authors who come onto our platform and talk and everything. And I think I always have had a big admiration and respect for the printed word. I really have. I think that there's a lot of knowledge contained within books. I'm a huge advocate of reading the books, not the Kindle, not just swiping with your finger. Read the book. There is so much knowledge that's within books about individuals, cultures, causes, and countries. So I'm proud to speak to, or have spoken to, another author. I think what you're doing is great, fantastic, and I do appreciate your perspective on things too as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you for promoting this and bringing me on and being part of it, right? Because that's what you're doing. I mean, you taking this moment and this step and going back and editing and getting it ready and doing all the work and putting it out there and all the choices you have to make. The marketing channels you use, everything that you do is partly in support of what you are working with, right? So in a sense, it's kind of like, thank you for being a Compassiviste, because that's what it is. If you do your bit, I do my bit, that doctor down the street does her bit, and she does her bit over here, then what do you think is going to happen? we have something, right?
Yeah, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. You see what I mean? So thank you for being part of that. Thank you for being an arm of that. And that's really what I tell people who interact, because the time itself is priceless. I mean, we put a price on people's hour, minimum wage and whatever, and whatever your hour's worth based on what you pay in taxes and stuff. But really, I can't put a price on the 45 minutes you just gave, because um, you could be doing anything else. And how do I give you that anything else back that I took? You see what I mean? So if I take that, it's got to be worth something that I can give back to you. Yes, we had this conversation. Yes, that's what you do. You do podcasts and everything. That's great. But it's got to be something more meaningful than me giving you some views and then those views turning into $5. It's got to be a little more than that.
Right.
And so I hope that over the year, you turn around and you're like, damn, that's Ali. He is actually making a difference. He is actually
Absolutely.
doing something, and that's what I aspire to. That's what gives me that push, so that I can come back to you one day and say, hey, remember me? Remember we had that talk? Here we are. Now you need to join. Now you need to be a part of what we're doing, and now we need to grow everybody that I've met along my life. And that's the goal.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to talking to you again one day. But I did want to say, I'll also give a shout out to your scheduler and planner, Camille, for making the introduction. That was very, very well
Yes.
done, and it is much appreciated.
Thank you very much. And I will send your regards to her, and we will speak soon.
Absolutely. Be blessed, sir. Have a good rest of the day over there, and I hope that everything that you're doing thrives and flourishes. And I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you very much. God bless.
God bless.